Hi everyone, Skip here. A few weeks ago, we were invited to be guests on the Set Lusting Bruce podcast with our good friend and podcast buddy Jesse Jackson. Normally, Jesse's show is about Bruce Springsteen and his fans, but for this episode, Jesse took a page from our show and suggested that we each pick our favorite cover songs. So, what you're about to hear is an episode from Jesse's show, but also posted here to our feed. So, thanks for listening, and we hope you like it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and today is a special crossover episode with one of my favorite podcasts. Skip was on the show a while back, and I started listening to the Skip and Josh podcast, and it has now become regular listening in my podcast feed. And I'm so happy that Skip and Josh said yes, they're willing to join me. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Jesse. Great to be back.
Thank you, Jesse. Thanks for having me. This is my first time, so I'm pretty excited.
I am too. This was so great because, as I said, Skip's a huge Springsteen fan. I have warned people that if you're a Canadian podcaster, we will do a 2-hour episode. Like
That's what happens. Yeah.
it does. It seems like I've had 2 or 3 people from Canada that are podcasters, and we just get to talking and talking and talking. And so I am so happy that you guys are willing to kind of do a crossover, so that as I'm celebrating, September is the 6th anniversary of the podcast, and I'm just thrilled you guys were able to join me and kind of help me celebrate.
That's awesome, and I'm glad you picked a good topic, Jesse. We're going to do cover songs.
We are going to do cover songs, and in your format, we're going to pick top 7. And I will get to why you pick 7. I know because I'm a regular listener, but my other listeners who have not checked out the show may not know. But let's start out with Josh. Give us your elevator pitch.
My elevator pitch. Well, I speaking of anniversaries, I think Skip, our anniversary for our show is in about a month or
It's
less.
November.
Well, the first official one was maybe released in November, but our first recording, I think, happened in September, late September, early October, 5 years ago. So
it was all when the Cubs were in the playoffs, right? That's the when the Cubs won the World Series.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and actually Skip I'm not sure which one of us thought of this idea, but we thought about it like 10 years ago and then didn't do anything for 5 years. And then finally decided to do something. So I'm glad
more than 10 years, Josh. I think we were talking about doing a podcast when no one knew what podcasts were, honestly.
We were cutting edge.
But then we just didn't do it,
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you about me. I grew up in Montreal, just like Skip. I live in Toronto now. Still a fan of all the Montreal sports teams. And even though I live in Toronto, I'm not a fan of any of the Toronto sports teams. Our show has a lot to do with sports, although lately we've been doing a lot of music and movies. So I guess that's my elevator pitch.
Jesse, it started like as a sports podcast, right? We're talking about whatever what was happening in the world of sports. We did that for 4 years or 3.5 or whatever it was. And then when the pandemic started, we were like, well, now we don't have anything to talk about. So we switched to like our favorite this, our favorite that, favorite album of the 80s, favorite burgers, favorite movies, movie soundtracks, favorite album covers, like
favorite places to buy French fries.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys were that specific.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, all kinds of like what things that we liked. I mean, truthfully, I think we're exhausting our topics. But we're going to try to keep it going.
You see, originally, sorry to interrupt you, but originally, because when I moved to Toronto, obviously I didn't see Skip as much as I used to in the past. And so we would talk on the phone all the time. And then I think I might have said to you, Skip, we should just record our phone conversations and then release it as a podcast. So that's how the idea came up. And
Yeah.
originally, the first few years, that's basically what we did. We just had a conversation about, like, did you see the game last night, or are you going to watch the game tomorrow? And that was basically it. Like, there was no script, there was no planning or any work involved. We just talked, and Skip does all the work. He does all the editing. He does all the posting. All I do is talk. And that's how the show started.
You know, one of the first podcasts I listened to was Galactic Quorum. And that was when Battlestar Galactica, the revamped version from Ronald Moore, Ron Moore, was on, and the two or three people that are on the podcast all worked in the same company, and so they were at lunch after a new Battlestar Galactica episode. They would sit in the lunchroom talking about it, and that's how they ended up coming up with the idea of the podcast. And so they just basically, instead of the lunchroom, found an empty conference room, put an MP3 player, in the top of the middle of the table, hit record, and had the discussion. And so when Skip was on the podcast, he told me your origin story, and I said, that's great, because to pull back a curtain, JV Clark, who does Springsteen Sings the Alphabet with Rob Carmack, he reached out, or I reached out to him, and he said, hey, I'd love to be part of the podcast, for your anniversary month. And he and I talked 2 hours Wednesday night, and I may get 30 minutes out of it that I can actually publish. Now my patrons, I gave them, all the complete unedited, but we just were telling stories and catching up, and once I told him, look, I'm just going to cut out anything that we don't want to, that we can't, I'll just build an episode out of it. We just went off on crazy tangents. So that was, I just love the idea of the dual purpose of, I want to stay current with my friend. Well, and maybe they'll find the conversations entertaining. Let's see.
I feel honored, Jesse, because last time I was on, we talked for like 2 hours, and then you ended up releasing my episode as a part one and a part two. Like, and I felt so important because your patrons were like able to get the episodes quicker. Like,
yes,
it was like
it was.
I was like, oh wow, I'm
Yeah,
big time. Yeah,
absolutely. So, Josh, I want to go at least a little bit into your musical background. Talk about, and then we're going to get to our main topic is we are going to do our top 7 covers. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we pick that and what makes a good cover and what makes a bad cover. And we will probably get more analytical than we should, but that's what we do here. But I know Skip's background, but Josh, tell me a little bit. You mentioned growing up there in Montreal. What kind of music did your family listen to? And was it a musical household?
Well, I mean, my parents listened to like Charles Aznavour, but that's not the music that I actually enjoy listening to.
Okay.
I do remember hearing that Charles Aznavour tape over and over and over again. My brother was into, classic rock. You could say he's older than me. He's 6 years older than me. So obviously that was a bit of an influence. There was really only one or two good radio stations in Montreal at the time. So I would listen to the rock radio station because I didn't really have much of a choice. But then as I got older and, Skip and I were roommates for a few years, I started to listen to alternative music, which is still what I listen to now, actually. So there was a time where Skip and I actually liked similar bands and music, but really now it's almost completely different. We don't listen to the same stuff at all. As for my musical background, I did try to take guitar lessons about 7 years ago, and I still don't know how to play guitar. So there you go.
There are many things that I would do if I had a working time machine, whether it was a TARDIS, the time tunnel, the DeLorean, but one of them would be go back and tell the 10, 11-year-old Jesse, start playing the guitar and work on it. Instead of watching Star Trek reruns or Partridge Family or the Brady Bunch. All those will be available later in your life. Just spend 30 minutes a day working on a guitar, because trust me, you will be much happier if you could play that when you're a 60-year-old guy. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Would you, Josh, would you say, do you have a couple of favorite bands that are go-to? I know Skip is passionate about Bruce the same way I am, and a few other bands, but are there a few that are your go-to?
Well, number one would for me would be the Tragically Hip. They're a Canadian band. I'm sure Skip has mentioned them. I think Skip has mentioned them. So
Yes.
they're iconic in this country. You know, they've toured the United States, but they're not big there. And of course, Gord Downie, their lead singer, unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. So they're not recording any new stuff. But I've seen them live, I think 17 times. I've met them backstage a couple of times. So they're easily number one for me. Other bands that I like that I've seen live, more than once would be Green Day and Weezer, bands like that. Those are the bands that come to mind.
Okay, that's pretty good. By the
Josh
way,
can't, Jesse, Josh
yeah.
cannot like we can't, I don't think we can explain enough how important the Tragically Hip are as a band to all of Canada. So like all your Canadian listeners right now are like clapping and jumping for joy that the fact that we mentioned the Tragically Hip, because they are really important to this country. That's all I want to say about it.
All right. We may have to do a follow-up episode where I've done this with a couple other people, Josh, where people will say, "Hey, I'm going to give you 6 or 7 songs from the Tragically Hip, and you listen to them, and then we'll have you come on and discuss them." I had David Fedor, who is a huge Bee Gees fan, and he gave me 6 or 7 Bee Gees songs that were not Saturday Night Fever, and I gave him 6 or 7 Springsteen songs that weren't Born in the USA, and we took turns talking about it, and that ended up being a really fun episode, because it's a good way to learn new music and to see, to have a chance to expand your perception of what other music is out there.
I'm game for that.
Okay, good. All right, we'll have to make that happen. Um, all right. You guys have kind of given a summary of your podcast. It is the aptly named Skip and Josh podcast. Was there a discussion about whose name went first?
There was
just
actually no discussion. I suggested that Skip's name go first. I just think it sounds better when you
Yeah.
say it that way. If you try saying it the other way, it just doesn't sound good. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Okay.
Originally, it was the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
Okay.
Right.
There are many episodes where that is the title if you listen to them.
Okay.
The voice you hear in our podcast that does like the intros and
Yes.
the little bumpers and stuff, that's my daughter. And then at one point she was like, the Skip and Josh Sports Show is such a tongue twister. I don't know why the hell you guys picked that name. and then we changed it. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love about your podcast, and I'm not stealing it because I'd already stolen Matthew. I can't think of Matthew's last name, but he's been on tons of shows. He's been on West Wing, and he was on The Sopranos, but he does a podcast talking about overcoming adversity. And when I listen to him, he always takes a snippet of one of the guests, what the guest says, and puts that first, then plays his introduction music, and then goes in the podcast. And I like that. So I started doing that. Before that, I just had different people, like you guys would say, this is Skip and this is Josh from the Skip and Josh podcast. And when we're not talking sports, we're listening to Set Listing Bruce, and I
Right.
had probably 80 of those. But I love y'all, and I did not know it was your daughter previously on the Skip and Josh podcast. And you guys just pull some funny quote or something that goes, "What the hell? Where did that out of context comment come from?" And I do love that she's like, and now more with the boys and number 6. So it is a lot of fun to hear her voice doing that.
Skip, I hope you'll agree with me, Skip, but it was my idea to use her voice.
I agree. Yes, but she's also game for anything.
Yeah, that's
so.
great. All right. So when tell my listeners why top 7, not top 10, not top 5. And just to give, I'm going to tell the story, part of it for you. As you guys have made it very clear, we don't have sports to talk about it. Let's come up with topics. And if I remember correctly, each of you came up with like 10 topics independently. And then you guys went, okay, we'll just rotate, right? Let's pick a skip topic. We'll pick a Josh topic.
When we started, we did a draft. We did a topic draft.
Oh, how fun.
So I
which
draft,
is very sportsy, right?
Yeah. So like well, it wasn't really a draft. It was more like a reveal, I guess. But yeah. Josh can tell you why top 7. That's his idea.
Well, I mean, because there are a lot of top 5 out there and there are a lot of top 10 out there. So I just wanted it to be different, really. No one does a top 7. It's like, why would you pick the number 7 of all things? You've heard of top 10, top 5, top 3. Yeah. 7 was just weird. And so I figured let's do 7. Also, it takes too long to do 10. We did a couple of episodes where we actually did 10 instead of 7 because there were too many good things. And then I listened back to those episodes and they're just too long, actually.
Yeah.
Our number 1 rule, Jesse, is it's our podcast, it's our show, we do what we want. That's our number 1 rule, right? So there are some times where we have a topic and I'm like, Josh, I can't get 7, I really have to include 8. And he's like, okay, I could do 8, or vice versa. So we kind of make up the rules as we go along, which I did in the cover songs we're about to do, because I made my own rules about what's a cover song, and then I kind of cheated. So
one of the I don't know if you guys have ever listened, but there Terry Smith, who has been on the podcast a couple of times, actually multiple times, came up with a Music Talks podcast that originally was Tea Time with Terry, but everyone kept thinking it was a golf podcast. And the premise is you pick a song from every decade you've been alive, and that gives you a talking point to basically tell your life. So like I was born in 59. So when I was on the show, I had to pick up a song from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, and then 10s, right? And there were, everyone from the beginning figures out a way to manipulate the rules. Like one guy said, well, I was born in 67, so my decades are 67 to 77, 78 to 87, 88 to 97, so that he could get the songs he wanted to do in the decade he wanted to, right? Like one of his 90 songs really came out in 2000, but he could fit it in 90 if he did it that way. And like I said, I was born in 59, so I could only pick a 50 song that was released in 59, because if I picked 58 to 50, I wasn't alive, so that shouldn't count. So I love this idea of us kind of, because they're self-imposed, right? This is not like there is a podcast Olympic committee that is ruling on what is acceptable and what isn't.
Maybe we need that committee. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would volunteer the 3 of us to start one if we want. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So covers. I'm going to start with you, Josh. What makes a good cover in your mind?
Well, I mean, I guess what makes a good cover is it doesn't sound exactly like the original. So there's a difference, but not too different, because I mean, if I like the original song, then I want to sound somewhat like the original song. So not sure if I really answered your question, but that's what I look for in a cover song.
No, I think that's that would have been the answer I gave. Skip, step in. What's your thoughts?
Very similar in that the song has to be kind of better or at least different than the original.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I tried on my list, I tried to make sure that the originals were at least known, right? Because there's many songs like Jesse, would you consider Fire like a cover song? Well, maybe that's the wrong example. I'm trying to think of like a song that like Bruce Springsteen wrote for someone else, right?
Well, I think Spirit in the Night. No, not Spirit in the Night. The Patti Smith song. Why am I drawing a blank of?
Because the night.
Yeah, because the night. Right. One of the things that irritates me is there is a Cover Me show on E Street Radio
Yeah.
and he will play either songs other people cover of Bruce's or songs Bruce covers. And when he plays Because the Night, I'm like, no, I mean, he specifically gave that to Patti Smith that she wrote some of the lyrics. She wrote the lyrics and that is her song. So like, I guess Fire maybe would fit it, but you'd absolutely think of this as it was a Pointer Sister song.
Right.
And he's doing like,
I mean, we know it because we've heard it live
Yeah,
in different
yeah.
bootlegs and on the live
Yeah.
albums, but like most people don't know that song by Bruce Springsteen, right?
Yeah.
So in the spirit of like all my songs on my list are all like what I said there. The covers are
Yeah.
better or different, and the original is well known. But I did cheat because there is one on my list where I thought the song is so good, even though no one really knew or knows that the original was written by someone else. The original recording is quite obscure in that artist's catalog, and I'll get to that in a second. So,
well, I'm going to give two examples, and I'd love for both of you to jump in. Right, Me and Bobby McGee by Janis Joplin was written by Chris Christopherson. I don't think of that as a cover song. I just think of there's a songwriter who does a version. Same thing. Bruce Johnston wrote I Write the Songs. Barry Manilow had a huge hit with it. I don't think that is a cover. I think it is just the original songwriter did a version of it.
There's so many songs in the 60s, right, where
Yeah.
there were songwriters, right? There were songwriters and there were performers. And then the record companies were like, here's the song you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
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 So I didn't really count those.
Yeah, and now that I'm looking at my list, there may be a couple of these that you guys may point and go, well, I thought you weren't going to do these, but that's okay because, we're all on the list. Exactly, right? We're making it up as we go.
Right.
If I could just interject
please.
for a second. So I just looked at my list of the 7 songs, 4 of them, when I heard them, like the newer version, let's call it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was an older version of the song. I thought that was the original because the older version was, before I was born.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Josh, because I think that's another important thing. One of my honorable mentions is that, similar to things. So I do agree. And there are somewhere, I think like Jimi Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower, people don't think of that as a cover, even though it's a Dylan song, right? Because it's so iconically done to him. Barry Manilow's I Write the Songs. I know this is the second time I brought that up, but it's just no one thinks of that as a cover. That's his song. And I do think it's very funny that an artist who is known to be a prolific songwriter and, all the commercials and all the songs, one of his most signature songs is something he doesn't write.
I thought Barry Manilow was always known as this songwriter that actually he was the guy who gave the songs to the other artists, right?
Exactly.
Wasn't a performer first. So that is odd. I actually didn't even know that wasn't his song until just a few minutes ago.
Very nice. There we go.
Jesse, it's interesting that you mentioned All Along the Watchtower. It didn't make my list, but I did consider it. And I was actually thinking of the U2 version on Rattle and Hum when I was thinking of this song, not Jimi Hendrix or Bob Dylan.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I had that on my honorable mentions, Josh.
So as we produce on the air and on the fly, do we want to start at 7 and go up, or do we want to go through a couple of honorable mentions first? I sometimes think you guys do it both ways. I've seen it where you guys do your list and then kind of talk about the things that didn't make the list, or you guys do the honorable mentions first and then get onto the countdown?
I have too many honorable mentions, so I don't think I should mention them. But I'll just tell you that no Bruce Springsteen songs made my top 7, and I did have there are a couple that are in the honorable mentions, Jesse. So like Rhinestone Cowboy, but that's only because it's on it's the last track on the movie version of Western Stars. And then also, I mean, I'm sure you've heard his version of Purple Rain, but it's also just a live version. It was never really recorded, you know, so I didn't really count those.
That is a great version. I mean, what a great tribute to
Prince.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And I only have 2 honorable mentions that I don't really want to mention them. So,
so
we can just go straight to number 7 if that's
all right.
So Jesse, the rules of the game are it's your topic, so you go first.
Okay, well, nice to know that. All right, so I'm going to do one maybe a little not expected, but I grew up in the I was born in 59. 70s pop top 40 radio was where I cut my teeth with music. I had a little AM clock radio. You know, the sound was not the best, but it was what I listened to. And so I did love Queen, and I loved Foghat, but I also loved Barry Manilow. You know, that was the radio, ELO. And a few years ago, he did a collection of show tunes. You know, basically, he picked songs from Broadway shows and performed them. And Will Rogers Follies has a song, Never Met a Man I Didn't Like. And Will Rogers' core being was, you know, he believed that once you understood where a man's coming from, there's no way to dislike him. And so he would say, I've never met a man I didn't like. And there is a song about that. And for some reason, because I think that's my philosophy, is I try to see the best in people, and I try to give out as much positivity and love on the world. That just song really spoke to me. So that's number 7 on my list.
Very nice. Josh, you go next.
Oh, I'm next. Okay. So number 7 on my list is The Man Who Sold the World. So this is one of those where when I heard the Nirvana version in 1993, I didn't even know that it was originally written by David Bowie in 1970. And then it was covered also by Scottish musician Midge Ure in 1982. So obviously it's on the MTV Unplugged CD. And so that's when a lot of people started to notice this song. And I just think it's a really nice song. And I like the newer version better, to be honest, the Nirvana version.
I actually love that pick, Josh.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I really like that one too.
And we have an avid listener, Jason, Josh, who emails us every week with his picks for whatever we're doing. And he's screaming at you right now because he's a huge Bowie fan.
Yeah.
So, I like David Bowie also, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Skip.
7 for me. Did you guys see the movie Crazy Rich Asians?
Yes.
I have not seen it.
So there is a version of the song Yellow by Coldplay by a young lady by the name of Catherine Ho. And she does the song Yellow, but it's in Chinese.
Oh.
And it is spectacular. There's so many articles about how this song was included in the movie and how she became the singer. And, you know, but basically, you know, the director went to Coldplay and say, we want to use this song. And Coldplay and their manager said no. And the director of the movie wrote a handwritten letter to Chris Martin, and then they agreed. And he explained why it was so important. All I could say is it's a spectacular version of the song, and very unexpected, obviously, because it's in a language that, you know, I don't even know what she's saying, to be honest. You know,
I absolutely adored the movie. I thought it was just very funny, a great romantic comedy, spectacular scenery, and a fun premise. And I don't remember that moment, but now I will. I'm not a big Coldplay fan, so that I may not have caught that. So now I need to go see it. That's great. Good. All right. Wonderful.
You're
All
up
right.
with number 6. Yeah.
All right. Number 6. This could have been higher. But I grew up, as I talked about, another 70s. Um, Poor Pitiful Me, Linda Ronstadt.
Hmm.
Linda Ronstadt was the queen of covers of the 70s. She did so many Back in the USA and just so many other covers. And she was just something. I had a huge crush on Linda Ronstadt, I won't lie. I sent you guys that on my list of covers. Album covers discussion, including my Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass, Whipped Cream and Other Delights. And I sent you guys the cover of that saying, young Jesse, when he saw his parents' list of albums, this did something to him. And if you've never seen the cover, it's a woman in fully covered in whipped cream, but it still was something that was so I remain to this day a huge Linda Ronstadt fan. I think the documentary they just recently put out with her, The Sound of My Voice, she now can't sing because of her MS, but so I had to pick a Linda Ronstadt cover, and so I picked Poor Pitiful Me.
It's a spectacular documentary, and I have a Linda Ronstadt in my list, by the way, coming up.
Oh, good. All right, Josh. Number
Nice
6.
pick, Jesse. That one caught me off guard, but nice pick. So number 6 for me. So when I heard this Pearl Jam song in 1999, I had no idea that it was a cover of anything. So it's the song Last Kiss, and it was originally released by someone by the name of Wayne Cochran in 1961. And then he actually re-recorded it in 63, and then it was later revived by J. Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers. But in 99, Pearl Jam was on part of a charity album called No Boundaries. And this song also appeared on one of their albums in 2003 called Lost Dogs. And their version peaked at number 2 in the United States and Canada, making it the band's highest charting single in either country, which I was surprised to learn because Pearl Jam's got a lot of great songs. And I'm surprised that this is the highest charting single they ever released.
Great choice. And I also love that sometimes artists, this charity or where they'll do a tribute album to an artist, like a Buddy Holly tribute or a Lead Belly or a Johnny Cash, or pick an artist who has passed and they'll do a tribute album. A lot of times I think artists get out of their comfort zone and do something pretty interesting for that. And so I think that's neat that not only is it a good cover and a successful one, but it was because of this tribute. I like that.
All right. So I got my number 6. Me and Josh did a whole episode on Ben Folds.
Yes, you guys did. Yes.
Yeah. So number 6 on my list is a song that was originally recorded by The Cure in 1985, and the song's called In Between Days. Ben Folds released it in 2003 on like an EP. He has a million EPs. And the song is just brilliant. It's true to the original in a sense, but it's also really just showcases his like how good a musician he is, the piano playing and the arrangement and everything. And it's really quite a spectacular song. Honestly, it's great.
Nice pick, Skip.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I did. Ben Folds is one of my blind spots of music, right? It is. And so a few years ago, we did a whole episode on geek blind spots. Like, I've never watched all of X-Files.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, that's like, really?
I've never watched X-Files either.
Yeah. But as a huge science fiction fan, you're like, oh, wow, I'm really surprised about that. So Ben Folds is in my blind spot. So I really enjoyed when y'all talked about that because it gave me little samples of different music to check out. So great choice. Number 5, and I'm breaking my own rule, and I'm going to do 2 songs from the same artist. But I couldn't not have Hurt by Johnny Cash.
Oh, wow.
I just think that the writer of the song, supposedly, and I don't know how much of this is just legend or, apocryphal, but supposedly he said, what Johnny Cash doing my song? And then after he heard it, said, "Oh my God, I didn't know I had written a Johnny Cash song."
I didn't know
Uh,
that wasn't written by Johnny Cash till just
no,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a now I'm going to draw a blank. Come on, um, Google, talk to me. Yeah, I'll look it up really quick. Yes. So the video was amazing. He, just the, because it was toward the end of his life, that whole Americana Records and series of albums, it was a Nine Inch Nails song. And, so Trent Reznor is the one who said, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I'd written a Johnny Cash song." So yeah, Hurt by Johnny Cash would be number 5 for me.
But did you say 2 artists? You said you had another Johnny Cash, or?
I have another Johnny Cash later on my list.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. All
Nice
right,
pick, Jesse.
Josh. Yes.
Okay, so for those David Bowie fans out there, he makes another appearance here in my list. The song is "All the Young Dudes." So this
Ooh,
was written
good.
by Bowie, and actually it was written by him, but originally recorded by the English rock band Mott the Hoople in 1972.
Right.
Apparently, Bowie gave the song to them after they rejected Suffragette City. Anyway, it was later covered by World Party, who I love, on the Clueless soundtrack in 1995. But in this case, I have to say I do prefer the David Bowie version.
Oh wow! So you have a cover song where you prefer the original. Love it.
Yes, yes. Well, this
Talk
is
about
one of
making
those
up your
where
own rules.
no. Well, this is one where when I heard the cover version, I'm like, oh, I know this song. It's a song by Bowie. As opposed to the first 2 on my list, I didn't know that they were old songs.
Mhm.
So listeners, I need to put an editorial note in here. Like when you used to read comics, there would be the little asterisk and, editor's note. Please go see, Action Comics number 785 or something. Skip and Josh just did an episode as we're recording this, talking about their top soundtrack releases, albums, CDs, 8-track cassettes, whatever you want. And oh my goodness, I was, it's a good episode when you sit there going, damn, I wish I was there when I recorded this.
Mhm.
Damn, I would have liked to have that. So since you're talking about Clueless and brought that up, so need to go check out that episode. It was well done. Great discussion. I immediately threw down my top 7 and not only emailed it to you, but posted it on your Facebook page.
I was so shocked. I was so shocked. I didn't even know you were on Facebook till then.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Skip.
Number 5. So
yes.
I don't know. Have either of you heard of this artist, this band called The Bird and the Bee?
No.
No,
Josh,
I haven't.
Do you know them?
No, I mean, maybe if I heard a song, I would recognize it.
It's Inara George. She's the bird, and the other guy, his name is Greg Kirsten, is the bee. They have many albums. They have tons of albums. I've got all kinds of their songs on my phone. But in 2010, they released an album called Interpreting the Masters Volume 1, a tribute to Daryl Hall and John Oates. So the whole album is them doing Hall and Oates songs. and it's a fantastic album of straight covers, and I could have picked any one of those songs from that album. And then we had to wait 9 years because in 2019 they released Interpreting the Masters Volume 2, and it was a tribute to Van Halen. So my choice for number 5 is the Bird and the Bees version of Jump. Ooh. And I can't describe it. It's like they're like a pop jazz. I can't even describe their music. But Jump is just so original and so fun. Like I love listening to it. It's rare, Josh, that I have an artist that you don't know.
It is actually, yes.
Yeah, Skip, I'm sitting here going, can we pause just for a moment for me to go Google this? Because I so want to hear this. That's good. I'm making notes. Because, hey, it's been a whole 10 minutes that we haven't mentioned Bruce Springsteen. I was at that NCAA free show that he did a few years ago, where the E Street Band came out to the sound of Sweet Georgia Brown, the Harlem Globetrotters theme song, and they did a jump ball between him and Niels Lofgren, and then the band went into Jump. If you have never heard it, Google Springsteen, Bruce Springsteen, Jump. And I made the joke on Twitter, who had Jump on your bracket as the opening song? And a lot of people goes, The Boss, destroying brackets, because it was perfect because of the NCAA tournament.
Right.
I cannot wait to hear that. Jump was one of my, I know it's probably the hardcore Van Halen fans roll their eyes the same way hardcore Springsteen fans might roll their eyes at Glory Days, but I'm sorry, I love Jump, and so I can't wait to hear this version.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a great song, actually.
Yeah, it is. All right. Any other thoughts before we go to number 4?
No, go for it.
All right. Nitty Gritty Dirt Band is one of my favorite. They would be considered Americana now, but they were at the long time. They were kind of country rock, and they have a version of the Buddy Holly song "Rave On" that just makes me smile and brings me joy. It has a very heavy guitar on it. They speed it up a little bit. There's a little more energy than the Buddy Holly version. I fell in love with Buddy Holly music when the movie came out with Gary Busey. I had not really known Buddy Holly except maybe through Linda Ronstadt's covers of them, and fell in love with Buddy Holly's music. But Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's version of Rave On is such a great, exactly what you talked about, Josh, that it's different than the original. It's a spin take on it, but it keeps the spirit of the original. So that would be my number 4.
Very nice, Jesse.
All right.
So next for me, this is another one where when I heard the newer version, I didn't even know there was an older version. And I'm cheating slightly here, and you'll understand this in a second. The song is called Love Is All Around, the original song. And it was recorded in the 60s by the English rock band, the Troggs. Now, in the movie Love Actually in 2003, there's another version of this song actually called Christmas Is All Around, not Love Is All Around, but it's basically the same song except for that one word. And it was sung by actor Bill Nye, who plays a fictional rock star, Billy Mack, in the movie. Anyway, so I only discovered the song from watching the movie, and it's a really good movie and has a very good soundtrack too. And I just like the song, and I didn't even know that there was an older version of it. And it's also been used in commercials, actually, in Canada at least. So now I hear it all the time.
It's funny, Josh, because obviously we know each other so well, but what I've discovered about since we've been doing this podcast in the last 5 years is that you have a real soft spot for that movie, Love Actually.
It's one of my favorite movies, actually. I think I have it, I recorded it once on my PVR, and it's still on my PVR, although I haven't watched it in months.
Right. That's cool.
So before you get to yours, first off, great choice. I love that. And the scene where I love Love Actually, not to pardon the pun, but the scene where Jamie flies to go to the restaurant and meets that, that whole long sequence and the instrumental score that's underneath it. If I am in a bad mood, I will find that and just watch that. And just the whole, and as people start following him and following them, and he gets to the restaurant, and his language is so poor, and he's talking, and the subtitles show that all the things he's getting wrong. And then when she goes, yes, silly question, and you see she learned English just the same way he learned. I'm tearing up right now. So I'm right there with you. I love
it's really
that
great.
movie.
Honestly, it's such a great movie.
It is.
There's so many good scenes in that movie.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I don't know if I can't remember if you guys have joined the Ted Lasso bandwagon or not.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, they just did a wonderful tribute to that, right, on the Christmas episode.
Yeah, it was okay. The Christmas episode wasn't the best, but it was still fun.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. So. Very good. All right, Skip.
Number 4 is Where I Cheated.
Please, I love that.
This is a song that really, it was released by the original artist, but it's very unknown. So the song is Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor.
Okay.
And many people don't know that that song was written by Prince. And he did release it on an album that of a project that he was working on, like not with his name on it, in 1985. But I mean, obviously in 1989, Sinead O'Connor released this song, and it was like, it was number one in like more than 20 countries, and like it's just such a mega hit. I mean, it's unfortunately for her, like she never could follow it up. The song was just so huge that like no one knows her for anything but this song. And I think it's still probably the greatest breakup song ever.
Oh.
Maybe we'll do top 7 breakup songs, Josh, because we're running out of topics.
Ooh, that sounds great.
I've just given you my number one. So
Yeah.
You know, that CD where the Sinead O'Connor CD, I think that's the first CD I ever purchased.
wow.
Not the first album, but the first
Yeah.
CD I ever purchased.
And is it true that you went to see Sinead O'Connor in concert with my wife?
I don't remember that, but if she says yes, then
No,
I guess
she
we
didn't tell
did.
me that, but I thought that's what you
For
told me.
some reason, you remember that? That's great.
I don't remember seeing her in concert, but it's possible.
My wife and Josh knew each other in high school before.
Okay.
Like that's how we met. So.
Yeah, that's greatness. She's the one who, you know, connected you two. That's wonderful. All right, great choice. Yeah, and you know, it is kind of funny, right? That
Actually, Jesse, if I could correct you, sorry, and you may want to delete this part. I'm the one who introduced Skip to his wife. They didn't know
Right.
each other.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes. So I knew her before I knew him,
Oh,
That's right.
okay.
and she didn't know him.
Oh, okay.
And it's all because of the Duke Blue Devils, Jesse. But that's a story for another time.
Oh, I want to hear that story now. Okay, so we'll let it go, but I want to hear that story sometime. So we're up to number 3, and I'm sure that my listeners are going, "Where's the boss, Jesse? What's going on?" I grew up in Southwest Louisiana. I was born in Louisiana. My dad was in the Army. We moved around a lot, but by the time my parents got a divorce in the 8th grade, I came back to school in Louisiana and then finished my high school and lived in Louisiana till 86 when Lynn and I, who's my wife, got moved to Dallas. So Bruce Springsteen's version of Jolie Blanc, which is an old Cajun traditional song, is number 3 on my list. If you don't know the song, go to Google and go Jolie Blanc, Australia. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast who are Skip and Josh fans and not Springsteen fans, over the last few years, Bruce has started the tradition of picking up signs from the audience and kind of a version of stump the band, or, you know, request, the same way that someone like at a singer-songwriter bar would like, hey, let's get anyone got a request. And someone requested Jolie Blanc, and the band had not rehearsed it, and they did a version that is just amazingly kick-ass. So
It's not on any album, right? It's only live.
no, it is only live. Gary U.S. Bonds had a hit with it, and Bruce helped produce that along with Little Steven. But it is the top. I always ask Josh on the song when I have a guest on, I go, what songs are you still chasing of Bruce's? Like when you go to a live show, what song have you not heard him sing that you wish you could? And Jolie Blanc makes my top 5 list for that. So Jolie Blanc, Bruce Springsteen.
So I'll confess, I've never heard the song, so I'll have to go look for it now.
Yes, yeah. This is by far, I believe, the most obscure on my list. I didn't think you would know. I knew Skip would. All right, Josh, what you got?
Okay, so number 3. So here's another one where when the newer version came out, and the newer version, by the way, came out in 1987, so quite a long time ago, I didn't even know there was an older version that was 20 years older. So the song is I Think We're Alone Now by Tiffany, whose last name I didn't even know is Darwish. Of course, I really liked the song in the 80s when I was much younger. And only a few years later did I discover that it was actually recorded and released in the 60s by what was composed by Richie Cordell and performed by Tommy James and the Shondells, which when you hear Tommy James and the Shondells, that's like a typical name for a band in the 60s. So the Tiffany version reached #1 on the charts in various countries, including the US and Canada.
I'm a huge Tiffany fan. I had the CD. I'm not afraid to admit it.
I'm not afraid to admit it either. And I love that. And immediately in my mind, I think we're alone now. So absolutely spot on, perfect choice. Well done, sir.
Very nice.
Yes.
All right. So Jesse, number 3 for me, I promised you Linda Ronstadt.
Yes.
And, one of the greatest, most well-known songs by the Eagles is Desperado. And, they released that in 73. And then later in 73 on an album, Linda Ronstadt released her version. And there's also some great live versions. When you hear Linda Ronstadt sing Desperado, like I have a live version on my phone, and honestly, I can't think of someone who has a better voice than how she sings that song. It is absolutely spectacular.
I totally agree with you. Before the pandemic, Linda and I had bought tickets. We have never seen the Eagles live. And, and now then, with Glenn Frey being gone, I guess we won't ever see the originals, but they're touring again.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince Gill is joining them, doing a lot of the high parts. And we have tickets that's finally come up. And so the next couple of weeks, we just got notified by email that we're going to have to show that we are vaccinated, but we are going to hear the Eagles. And I know that when I hear them do Desperado, I'm going to smile and be content. And I absolutely agree with you. Linda Ronstadt's version is so lovely, heartbreaking.
You mentioned
everything.
The documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody who doesn't really know Linda Ronstadt should watch that. She was, like they tell you in the documentary, she was like Beyonce. She was as big as Beyonce in the 70s. Like she was the most popular female artist like of her time by a mile. Right. And it's sort of forgotten now, but anyways, listen to Desperado because it's great.
Yeah. And we could do a whole episode on Linda Ronstadt because, she's at the peak of her pop music, rock and roll power. She decides to go with Nelson Riddle and do albums of standards.
Right.
Were amazing. Then she decided, because she was from a Hispanic background, she did 2 or 3 albums of nothing but Spanish songs. I mean, just can you imagine, a pop star, anyone, now I'm just going to do a whole album of that.
Yeah.
And then
they usually do it when they get older, like
Right.
Rod Stewart now sings the standards, or
Yes.
so and so does duets with Tony Bennett, but like
Right.
this is Linda Ronstadt, like when she's fresh off being #1, like
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I Remain, then she does the album where Aaron Neville does duets with a lot of her, Howl Like the Rain Storm and Scream Like the Rain or whatever. And that is truly one of my favorite albums. So yeah, it is, because we don't always remember the history, a lot of people don't realize like how freaking big she was.
Right.
And yeah, amazing. Great choice. Great choice.
So I'm the only one that doesn't have a Linda Ronstadt song on their list of the 3 of us.
Are you scrambling now to add one? No.
Actually, I can't, because I've only got 2 left, and I can't remove any of these 2.
Yes. So this is number 2 for me. And I am a huge Carole King fan. I think that she would have a spot on. There's only 4 spots on a Mount Rushmore, and I think Carole King would earn one of my spots. It would be tough because there's so many great people, but just as a songwriter, her and her husband at the time, Kevin King, just wrote Locomotion and so many other, Up on the Roof, and You've Got a Friend, and so much. And I adore her Will You Love Me Tomorrow. It originally came out by the 60s, and Dave Mason does a version of that. There's an episode coming up, guys, where a friend of mine joined me and we picked our top 5 Sorkin TV moments. We
Wow.
both are huge Aaron Sorkin fans, so we picked the moments of musical moments of either West Wing, Sports Night, Studio 60, The Newsroom. And there is a scene where on Studio 60 where Abby, the Matthew Perry character, is walking away and they are playing Dave Mason's Will You Love Me Tomorrow. I think that's a great song anyway, but to have a guy sing it, it changes the tone a little bit. Tonight You're Mine completely, but will you still love me tomorrow? When it's a female singer, there is a certainly perspective, and you can in your mind fill out the blanks of, okay, we were intimate, you're laying in my arms, now will you be tomorrow? Will you not call me? Will you not quote unquote respect me in the morning? And a guy having the same feelings about, I've given myself, I'm vulnerable to you, and now that you've seen me, will you still love me tomorrow? Just truly speaks to me. So that was my number 2.
Love it. I love it.
Jesse,
I got to go listen to the cover because I don't know it, but the song by Carole King is spectacular.
Jesse, it's great how passionate you are when you describe the song and how you feel when you listen to the song. It sounds like you've listened to it quite a bit, and you've done a lot of research too. So I have to say, just going off topic slightly, I did more research for this episode than any other episode Skip and I have ever recorded ever. So
I love that. And in my mind, Skip, Josh, right? You sitting here and just listing a bunch of songs is not entertaining, but telling why
Of course.
that means to it's the excuse to talk about this, to share, is the reason why. And so I actually take that as a great compliment. Not that I wanted to give you extra work, but the idea, right, that you're so passionate and let me think about this and what I want to do this is a really nice compliment.
So the top 2 on my list, as soon as Skip told me what the topic was going to be, I knew what my top 2 songs were going to be. Those were the easy ones. And both of these are songs, when I heard the newer version, I'm calling it, I knew the older version immediately. So that wasn't an issue. So number 2 on my list is The Boys of Summer. Obviously, that's a Don Henley song. And actually, I discovered that it was written by Henley and the music was composed by Mike Campbell, who was with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Anyway, the title of the song comes from a 1972 baseball book by Roger Kahn called The Boys of Summer, which is about the Brooklyn Dodgers. So in 2003, a band called the Ataris covered their song for their album, So Long Astoria. And the song became a single when a radio station started to play it. The Ataris version of the song replaced the lyric Deadhead sticker with one more appropriate for the age group of the Ataris fans. And they replaced it with Black Flag sticker in honor of the punk rock band from the 1980s. So I actually, as good as the Don Henley version is, I think I prefer the Ataris version of this song.
Josh, I had this in my honorable mentions only because I looked through all the music on my phone and I picked out all the covers. So it made the list, but I couldn't, I liked the Don Henley one so much better that I couldn't, include it.
That's fair.
That's fair. That's why we have opinions.
That is an amazing story. And I do not know that cover, so I will go listen to it. One of the other things, the Gazelle Twin did a version of Love and Mercy that they featured on an episode of The Walking Dead. And that almost made my list, but because I love Brian Wilson's version of Love and Mercy too much, I for the very same reason I couldn't take it. the other story you made me think of is, you know, John Hyatt, who I think you guys have both talked about.
Don't steal my thunder, Jesse. John Hyatt's my number 2.
Okay, then I'm gonna shut. I'm not gonna tell the story. Then I'm not.
I don't know if we're talking about the same
I don't know,
song or
but
not.
just in case, I'm gonna hold off. Okay.
Well,
go.
My number 2 is a song written by John Hyatt, but famously recorded by Bonnie Raitt, and that's the song "Thing Called Love." Is that where you were going?
No, but go ahead.
So obviously, most people know Bonnie Raitt, "Thing Called Love." It was on her 1989 album "Nick of Time," which won like the Grammy Album of the Year. "Thing Called Love" was a huge hit. But I mean, it was originally written and recorded by John Hyatt just 2 years earlier on "Bring the Family." And now, Jesse, we were supposed to do a John Hyatt episode, like, I mean, for the non-John Hyatt educated, "Bring the Family" is like his most famous album, I guess,
Yeah.
right? So,
by the way,
yeah,
we anytime you name the time, we will do a John Hyatt episode. That would be awesome.
Bonnie Raitt's album and "Nick of Time" it's like in Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums. I think it's in the 200s. Like, I mean, it's such a well-known album. But like the thing, I mean, the quote here I'm going to give you. I once read an interview with John Hyatt where he said he's made more money off the royalties from that song than he has in everything else he's ever done. So that single-handedly, Bonnie Raitt's version keeps him afloat financially.
When Linda and I have seen him twice recently, and one of our best friends is a guy named Marek Lisko, who died several years ago unexpectedly. He was our age, had an aneurysm, died, and just we were crushed. And for huge John Hyatt fan. And for the first few years, when John Hyatt would come to Dallas, Linda would go, "It's too soon, too soon." And so he was doing an acoustical show at the Hard Rock Cafe, no, House of Blues here in Dallas. And Linda said, "I think it's time." And so we went and saw him. And then for my birthday a couple of years ago, we went down and saw an acoustical show in Austin where it was just John doing him and his guitar. And in both of them, he talked about a thing called love and said that this paid for his kids to go to college.
Exactly.
You know, right? And Lily Hyatt is John Hyatt's daughter, and she is coming to Dallas in October. And I think she's a wonderful musical legacy. She's had multiple CDs, and I'm excited about seeing her. But yeah,
I discovered Lily Hyatt because you mentioned her. So
yeah, absolutely great number two. Great number two. The story I was going to tell is Memphis in the Meantime. There is a line where, first off, by the way, couple lines. When Charlie Watt died, as we're recording this recently,
I messaged you right away. You're the first person I thought of.
Yes, it was. I thought of Hyatt's song, you know, the kids in the backseat banging like Charlie Watt, which is a Hyatt song lyric. The other one is in Memphis in the Meantime. He says, "I don't think Ronnie Milsap is ever going to cover this song." Right. And then Ronnie Milsap covered the song, which almost made my covers just for the irony of that, right?
That would have been a good pick. Wow.
Yeah, that would have been a great pick.
So we're at number one now, right?
Okay, guys? Yeah, it is.
Wow.
So my repeat is another Johnny Cash. Bruce Springsteen's album Nebraska has a song called Highway Patrolman.
Ugh.
And I have often said that I believe Johnny Cash's version of Highway Patrolman is better than the Bruce Springsteen version. And that is tough as a guy who does a Bruce Springsteen podcast. Highway Patrolman is an amazing song. Sean Penn did a movie based on the song. It is just, I think it is a wonderful song about brothers, and, you know, you turn your back on your family, you ain't no good. I love Johnny Cash's version because it sounds like a Johnny Cash song, yet it's still a Bruce Springsteen song. So that was the first one I thought of. I thought of Dave Mason's Will You Love Me Tomorrow, Bruce Springsteen's Jolie Blonde, but I said Johnny Cash Highway Patrolman had to be my number one.
That's an awesome pick. Well, that song makes me cry.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Josh.
Lift us
Okay,
up with something more uplifting than, you
okay,
know.
I'll try. So, I guess number one, I'll just say I'm sure everyone's heard of the song Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson. This came out in 1987. It was on the album Bad, which I think had 7 different hits. Such a great album. I wasn't a huge Michael Jackson fan, but I really did like the song Smooth Criminal. And so the refrain in the song, Annie, Are You Okay? I didn't know this. It was inspired by Resusci Ann, which was a dummy used in cardiopulmonary resuscitation training. I had no idea. The things you learn when you do some research on music. So anyway, in 2001, Alien Ant Farm covered this song, and it was actually number 1 on the US modern rock charts, whatever that means. And so I watched the video to this actually for the first time a couple of days ago. And the music video features numerous homages to Michael Jackson and his videos. For example, the drummer in the band is wearing one white glove. Part of the video is outdoors, and when the singer steps on the sidewalk, the part of the sidewalk that he steps on lights up, just like in is that Billie Jean that happens in?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in one part of the video, the singer is sitting in a chair, but the chair is actually a huge silver glove. It's not an actual chair. So anyway, it's a great video. It's a great song. Both versions are great, but with me liking alternative music, I do prefer the Alien Ant Farm version. And it's so weird because before you ever hear Alien Ant Farm do this song, you don't think it could be like a hard rock alternative song. And then you hear them do it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is perfect.
I do prefer their version. The Alien Ant Farm version.
I have not watched the video. I have heard the song and I agree. I think it's a better song. I now want to go watch the video and kind of to see if I can count all the homages on it. That's great.
I'm sure there are a bunch that I missed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I'm at my number 1.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed because I really, when you told me cover songs, Jesse.
Yeah.
Like me and Josh always say, whenever you come up with a topic, there's usually like a raison d'etre. Like there's usually like, you already know one that you want to include. That's why you've come up with the topic, right? So I can't believe that neither of you, especially you, Jesse, didn't have the song Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley, which is actually an original song by Leonard Cohen. Like, to me, this is the obvious choice for the best cover song, but I guess that's why we have lists, right? So Leonard Cohen released the song in 1984. I mean, he wasn't really popular, but popular among his fans. And then Jeff Buckley released this song in 1994, and it is ranked 259 on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest songs of all time, the Jeff Buckley version. So that's my number 1.
Oh, great choice. I think I had the Leonard Cohen fan on the podcast, and you reached out to me and said how much you enjoyed that, because
that episode spoke to me, Jesse, in so many ways. Like,
yes,
because your guest, and sorry, her name escapes me, but
Hannah, I believe.
Yeah. She was describing Montreal.
Yes.
And I mean, I know intimately the parts that she was talking about. She was talking about streets that I'm aware of, right? Yeah. And just her experience at university, like there was so much of it that really spoke to my own, like I identified so much with it. I was like, I even messaged you after saying, wow, that episode really just blew my mind,
Well, and I love the idea she said that Leonard Cohen is and Bruce Springsteen have in common. They're arguably their most known song is their most understood song.
Right.
And so, yeah, great choice. I did not think of that, but I did. I'm glad you had it for the list. Josh, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, the problem with doing these lists, I don't know if it's really a problem. As soon as I'm done the list and as soon as we finish recording, I remember 1 or 2 songs or movies or whatever it is that I forgot to include. And of course, it's too late to add it now, but nice pick, Skip.
Thanks.
Yeah, great pick. I'm just going to throw in a couple of honorable mentions. If you guys have them, good. If not, that's okay. Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's version of Mr. Bojangles is one that I love. Jerry Jeff Walker just recently passed away, and that he's the one who wrote the song. That's a huge hit. Sammy Davis Jr. had a huge hit with Mr. Bojangles. Just a song that I really love. Julie London does a version of In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. The Sinatra standard is a great version of having, once again, the woman doing the "we," talking about it like the same way that Dave Mason did the "Will You Love Me Tomorrow." UB40's "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" or "Red Red Wine," both are kind of cheesy, but I truly, truly love hearing them.
I think I made fun of that song, Josh, on our soundtracks episode. I
Exactly.
think that's on the Clueless soundtrack.
I do. I'm sure you did. And I know it's cheesy, but I do just, and every once in a while, Bruce has covered "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You." Elvis was one of my first loves, watching Elvis movies on, we went and saw a couple in the theater and watching them on TV. And I remember having Elvis 8 tracks, him live. And so I love that. How about you? Do you guys have any honorable mentions you want to mention?
I have a bunch, but I'm only going to mention one artist. There's Sean Colvin has an album called Cover Girl, where every song is a cover song. And she's got some great songs on there. Tom Waits' cover of Looking for the Heart of a Saturday Night. And also Talking Heads, the song called This Must Be the Place. Like the whole album is just fantastic. I could have included all of them, really, but like making top 7 is obviously not easy.
Mandy Moore has a album of covers, and she does have A Little Faith in Me. Speaking of
well,
John
that
Hyatt,
song's been covered by so many people.
Yeah, but Mandy Moore's cover that's
Mandy Moore, the actress.
Yes. And the singer, she originally was a singer, and
Right.
she has a whole album of covers that's similar. I'm going to check out the Sean Colvin one. That'll be good. You should check out the Mandy Moore. How about you, Josh? Any that you wanted to right off hand?
Well, I mean, nothing specific, but Mariah Carey does a lot of cover songs.
Yes.
For example, I'm going to refer to the movie Love Actually again. In that, she sings All I Want for Christmas, and I really do like her version of it. And she also, not in the movie and not a Christmas song, but the song Without You from the 70s, she redid it in 1994, and I really like her version of that as well.
I've never heard you talk about Mariah Carey and Michael Jackson in the same half an hour.
Have you ever heard me talking about them at all?
It's unbelievable.
I love this. We're bringing people together.
Yeah.
One of the songs I got from Notting Hill was When You Say Nothing at All, which Alison Krauss did a cover of. That should have made my list because I absolutely adore that song. And I heard it she didn't do it on Notting Hill, but that had led me to that cover. This is great. We could go on and on and on. Skip, I'm going to ask Josh the Mary question in a moment. So any final thoughts about covers before we get over and put Josh under the spotlight?
No, I can't wait. Like, I've been waiting to hear Josh's answer to the Mary question, like, since we decided to do this recording. So I really can't wait to hear it.
All right. So if you're a Skip and Josh podcast fan, I hope you've enjoyed me joining the boys and this instead of a duet, making a trio. But I end every episode with Set Listing Bruce asking my guests whether they're a Springsteen fan or not, the Mary question. Here's the Mary question. Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher that just recently retired. And every year he asks his seniors, they go through the song Thunder Road. They read the lyrics. They talk about the imagery in the song. They talk about the themes of the song. And at the end of the 2 days, he asks his class, does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road? Because the song does not make it clear if she does or not. So Josh, if you did your homework, and if you didn't, I'll cut this out so I won't embarrass you. Does Mary get in the car?
Okay, so I did do my homework, and I'll get to my answer in a second. But I remember when Skip was a guest on your show the first time, I listened to that episode and you asked him this question, but I didn't go back to listen to it recently. So I don't remember Skip's answer. So my answer had,
you want to know it?
no, I don't want to know your answer. I don't, because I don't want it to influence my answer. So I will tell you, I've obviously I've heard the song, I don't know how many times, but I never really paid attention closely to the lyrics until this week. So I listened to it a few times again this week, and I read the lyrics online as well. And I even cheated and I looked for a video, but I couldn't find any video of the song. So I don't know if there is one where maybe I would see if she gets in the car or not. But in any case, I realized after doing all my homework, it's really just my opinion. Like there's no right or wrong answer here because you don't hear from Mary at all in the song. You only hear from him. So basically, the question I asked myself is, did he do a good enough sales job of convincing her to get in the car? And after listening to the song a few times, I have to say that yes, he did. And yes, she did get into the car.
So great answer and great logic. And I do agree. No, Bruce has never made an official Thunder Road video. There is plenty of videos of him doing the song with the band or acoustical. There's tons of covers out there. And I do think you don't hear from Mary. So I think you absolutely think this the right way. Does he make the case? My wife would say no, that him saying you ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. She's going to go F you. Get to hit the road.
What are the stats, Jesse? You have stats, right? Like you ask this question every time. You have hundreds of episodes. So like what's the breakdown of yes and no?
So I've never, and if I was a better statistician, I would actually go and capture the answer, but roughly 60-40. 60% say yes, 40% say no.
You should also break that down between males and females, because I think it'd be different if you did that.
I totally agree. And in fact, there is an episode where I a couple of years ago, I took the time and I picked 40 or so random episodes and I cut out just the Mary question and I spliced them all together. And then I sent them to Jay, the person who originally came up with this. And he listened to all of them, and then he joined me to discuss that. And he did some of that breakdown. A lot of females think it's Bruce asking them to get in the car. So they absolutely go, hell yes, it's Bruce Springsteen. Of course I'm getting in the car. I think a fair amount of people go, no, I don't think he does convince her enough. I've had other people say that it took a few years later that they got together. Someone said that Mary gets in the car, but the first time he stops for gas and cigarettes, she leaves. You're like, yeah, I'm just using you to get you out of town. Now that once I'm gone, like I'm out of here, I'm gonna go do something else. So I great answer. Very, very great answer.
And if I could plug you, Jesse, all your listeners can go buy the Mary Question t-shirt, Jesse's store, and I have one. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. That is so good to see. Yes, it was. And I think if I'll go off on just a slight tangent, one of the things that makes me sad about the current political state in the States is the anger of people. And there is a recent example of that is, Springsteen's manager came out and said, because there's a whole question, Josh, I don't know if you know this, but does Mary's dress sway or does it waves? And there is this, it is like, Yankee fans and Dodger fans or something. I'm like, there is not, you will not give up on which one. And,
what do you think it is?
Sorry, they're debating what he actually says in the song.
Yes.
Yeah, because when you look up the lyrics, if you look up the lyrics online in the actual lyrics, it says it says waves. But when you hear him sing it, it's definitely sounds like sways. So I always thought it sways, Jesse. I don't know how you feel.
I do too. And John Landau, who has been Bruce's manager since his time, said that it should be sways. That's the correct number. Going forward, any reprinting of lyrics will have sways on there.
Right.
That's the answer. And there are people, waves till my dying breath. I mean, they are arguing still
Right.
that, and it's like, no, we've answered the question, right?
Address
and Red
address
Sox.
can't wave. Address can sway. It can't really wave.
There you
That's
go.
exactly what a lot of people say. But there are people, waves till my dying breath. I'm like, really? This is the hill you want to die on? Right? Not, is it Jordan or LeBron or,
Yeah.
Hank Aaron or DiMaggio, right? No, this is just, there is the huge this about just a word. So anyway, the reason why is my shirt says the Mary question isn't whether the dress sways or waves, it's does she get in the car? So very nice. Guys, this has been a blast. I feel like I've been able to be invited into y'all's clubhouse and get to hang out with you guys. The only thing we're missing is in person, we'd be having snacks and tasty beverages. And hopefully someday after this pandemic, I will either make it to Canada or you guys will make it to Texas, or we will figure someplace in the middle and meet. But I am so grateful that both of you joined me today.
It was a pleasure to be here, to be with you. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you for having us. I think this is the first time, actually, no, the second time I've been a guest on another podcast. So quite a thrill for me.
Well, I am glad. Any final thoughts, Skip?
Final thoughts on the covers or
anything, just anything.
And
I want you guys to tell how they can reach you guys.
Oh, sure. So,
Okay.
The best place to reach us is the website, skipandjosh.com. There you have all the links to all the places where you can contact us, email, Twitter, Facebook. We're on all the platforms, and I'll answer every email that comes. So don't be afraid to send us anything.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again, Jesse. This was great, a lot of fun, and I can't wait till it gets released, because it'll be exciting for me to see my name and hear my voice on a podcast other than ours. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, I am too, and I don't know, maybe we should figure out a way to do this annually. Just
Definitely.
a good excuse to get together. All right, Skip, Josh, thank you so much for being part of this. You made the anniversary month very special. Keep doing what you're doing. As I say, I'm not exaggerating. I enjoy the episodes, even if it's like I am not a Montreal Canadian fan, and I'm like, boy, this is not an episode I'm going to enjoy. And I find myself just hearing you guys debate it and talk about it is just fun.
Yeah, we took a break from the top sevens at one point this
Yeah.
summer because the Montreal Canadiens made this huge run into the Stanley Cup final.
Right.
So we were doing like episodes every day or two, or
Yeah.
it was crazy how many we were doing. But thanks for listening to those, because I know that's not your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, it was very fun. And yeah. So listeners, thank you for listening. Go get vaccinated. Go take care of yourself. Remember to wear your mask. Remember to wash your hands. Remember to social distance. And let's all be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. Thank you, Skip. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, listeners. And we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Jesse. That was awesome.
Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.